So continuing from where I left off in part 1, I had already covered the full story of Cid Kagenou from the anime to the latest volume 4 of the light novel, and now with that, let's go over his powers and abilities in more detail to give everyone a better idea of how powerful he actually is. As usual, here's a spoiler warning if you don't want any spoilers regarding Cid's character and the story for the Eminence in Shadow, and don't forget to give the video a like or subscribing to the channel for more content like this in the future. To start, Kagenou Minoru has always been a hardworking person that constantly pushed his own limits physically and mentally by dedicating his life to studying and training in order to become an eminence in the shadows. However, due to the limitations of the fragile human body, he could only do so much before he hits a wall that he cannot surpass. But when he was hit by Truck-kun and reincarnated in another world filled with magic as Cid Kagenou, he finally had all the tools needed to achieve his dreams of becoming a true eminence in the shadows. So with knowledge of his previous world and his current world, he was able to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of his training routine, allowing him to develop his muscles, hone his mind, and perfected his abilities to surpass all the limits of a normal human being to reach the pinnacle of strength and power, becoming quite possibly one of, if not the most powerful individuals in the series. So what are some of the skills and abilities that allow Cid to become such an overpowered individual? For starters, with the addition of magic, he was able to push the limits of his physical conditions to peak superhuman levels. His entire body was capable of withstanding various forms of attacks and even allowed him to break materials like concrete and steel or even the bodies of highly durable opponents. He could even control his body to avoid attacks from hitting or damaging areas containing vital organs, as well as affecting the biology of his body to counteract and develop immunities towards certain harmful substances like poison or deadly gases. But aside from that, with the use of magic, he could also achieve superhuman levels of speed, like moving so insanely fast that he was able to live after images and no one could even perceive his movements if he truly went into his max speed. And one of the speed abilities that he developed was called Quick Flash, which allows him to move almost instantly to any place within his reach in less than 1 second, making it seem like he's teleporting. Although even without relying on magic to boost his speed, he can still easily make sudden changes and precise last-minute movements in such a natural way to dodge the attacks of his enemies that observers might think it was just a coincidence. Now, other than strength and speed, Cid also trained his 5 senses to beyond what a normal human is capable of, and within Shadow Garden itself, he probably only loses to Delta and Zeta simply because of their heightened senses as Beastkins. Regardless, his senses were still considered to be so insanely good that he can easily detect the presence of enemies no matter how skilled they are at hiding. He could even enhance his senses with magic to distinguish small details on objects or people, like when he was able to tell the difference between the counterfeit bills made by Yukime and those of the Mitsugoshi company, despite not knowing what they looked like. However, there was a much more extreme application of his enhanced senses, which led to him developing a special skill called Bionic Perception of Time. Whenever he activates this skill through magic, Cid can basically perceive everything that is currently happening around him in a way that looks like time has completely stopped, and it seems like no matter how powerful or skilled the opponents are, he can easily activate this technique to counter them, like when he was able to dodge the attack of Beatrix, the goddess of war, making it look like he slipped. That said, through his years of training and combat experience, he managed to develop a different type of sense, something similar to a warrior instinct or fighting spirit. This is apparently a skill that can only be achieved by the most elite of warriors and those who have fully mastered the art of battle. It's a skill that allows Cid to understand and learn about the opponents he's facing, whether it is their personality, identity, or emotions without ever needing to have a direct conversation with them, basically learning everything there is to know about a person simply through the way they fight. For example, when he was fighting the Witch of Calamity Aurora during the Trial of the Goddess, he could somewhat feel and understand her personality through their battle, and it really impressed and excited him. But he became disappointed after realizing that she wasn't actually present and it was simply a soulless construct created by the test, so he quickly ended the battle. Because according to Cid, if an opponent doesn't have a will of their own or a soul, the battle will become boring since he can easily predict their movements and counter accordingly, like during his fight with the hero Olivier. Now, thanks to his knowledge of fighting techniques of his previous life, Cid easily mastered the new fighting techniques of his current world and quickly became proficient in both swordsmanship as well as hand-to-hand combat from a very young age. In terms of his swordsmanship skills, his technique has gone beyond excellent and into the realms of transcendent, but at its core, his fencing was still considered to be ordinary. That's because instead of relying on talent, he only focuses on the fundamentals and his proficiency is simply a byproduct of all his hard work and dedication throughout the years. He was so insanely skilled that he could simultaneously fight and then easily defeat Beatrix and Iris Midgar, considered to be both of the most accomplished spell swords in the world. As for his hand-to-hand fighting ability, it's probably at a similar level to his swordsmanship skills, and during his fight with the Great Wolf Getan, you can tell how strong Cid actually is with how easily he was able to beat Getan, who has been enhanced by the Tears of Diablos, to a pulp with his bare hands. In any case, Cid also possesses such an insane amount of magical power that it shocked even the Wish of Calamity Aurora, and unlike the typical red color of most magic users, his magical powers were so potent and refined that it's purple in color and resembles circuitry. But even with such a large amount of magical power, he could still effortlessly suppress and contain his magic so that no one was even capable of detecting his true powers, and his understanding of magic was so precise that even in situations where magic is completely sealed off, he can still find ways to counteract the effects. For example, when the Count of Diablos used an artifact to seal the magic of his school, he was the only one able to use magic, and another case was inside the sanctuary and he was able to use magic after tempering its state. He even discovered the ability to share and give some of his magical powers with others, which funny enough he only learned after accidentally healing Alpha's demon possession. And whenever someone receives his magical power, their overall magic and physical capabilities are greatly enhanced, and if they are suffering from demon possession, it will be instantly healed as well. He recently used this in the anime to save Rose Oriana and give her the power to save her kingdom. Now aside from that, he also came up with many ingenious ways of utilizing magic for combat and in his everyday life, like walking on water, running at superhuman speeds, gaining the ability to fly, and many more. Although the funniest is how he uses magic to stick to walls or other surfaces, because it seems like he always uses this particular ability to avoid people like his sister Cid Kagenou or Rose Oriana. As for more combat-oriented use of magic, Cid managed to develop a few special techniques like his signature move, I Am Atomic, which is basically the culmination of all his hard work to finally defeat his last obstacle, nuclear weapons. He essentially accumulates all his mana to a single point on his weapon, then releasing it to deliver a devastating strike that will disintegrate everything in the vicinity similar to a nuclear explosion, minus the radiation. Also, whenever he activates this technique, he can project a barrier to isolate the area so anything outside would not be affected by the attack. He even created variations to this technique like I Am the All-Range Atomic. This is exactly the same, but it isn't limited by a barrier and will annihilate everything within a certain range in all directions. He used this to completely destroy the sanctuary in Limworm when he was fighting against the multiple clones of the hero Olivier. There's another one called I Am Recovery Atomic, and this can heal people within a certain range, but it can also destroy the area, albeit with less destructive power. Cid used this technique during his fight with the Blood Queen Elizabeth in the Lawless City to stop her rampage while healing his allies in the process. Moving on, another technique he developed was known as Magic Threads, and he first created this when he was posing as John Smith because he wanted to use a different fighting style from his usual shadow persona. This allows him to create powerful magical strings that he can manipulate through his fingers, and the strings were so strong that he can easily cut through most materials. He used this during his battle against Ragnarok, the king of the 4th demon realm, where he sliced the creature into pieces. But this wasn't just for killing, because it's also highly effective at restraining people, like when he fought against members of Shadow Garden where he managed to easily subdue them without harming them. That said, although Cid is still a delusional tuning bill, he was actually quite intelligent, being able to understand several complex subjects like commerce, physics, biology, and many more. He even conducted various kinds of research to test the limits of what he's capable of, and one of the products was his invention of the slime bodysuit. This was made using the corpses of Rimur's family, and because slimes have high magic conductivity, around 99%, it was highly flexible and provided an insane amount of utility. It also increased the efficiency of the user and boosted their natural abilities. And for Cid, who has mastery over magic, he's the only person that can utilize the suit to its fullest potential, being able to manipulate the suit in such creative ways. However, I think his intelligence and knowledge benefited Shadow Garden the most because they were able to take his teachings, developing them into something that helped their organization to grow. Like how Gamma created the Mitsugoshi company to sell innovative products to help them financially, or how Epsilon and Beta both became influential people thanks to his teachings in order to create connections with other people and gather information. Also, because Cid personally trained the first 7 shadows with all his refined combat techniques, it was not surprising that they would go on to train the other members of the organization. That's why many of the normal members were considered to be above average warriors and outclassed most spell swords in the world. Although among the 7 shadows, only Alpha managed to master all the techniques that he taught and is probably the closest to Cid in terms of fighting ability. Next, I want to talk about his obsession in trying to make himself look like a mob character, and although this doesn't really showcase how powerful he is, I think it's still worth mentioning. So obviously, keeping with the eminence in the shadow aesthetic, he had to maintain a public persona and his shadow persona, and because of this, he developed Mobu, the art of being a background character, and their moves that allow him to appear as mediocre as possible when he is in his public persona. Apparently, there are 48 ultimate forms of Mobu, but here are 2 known examples. The first is called Spinning Drill for Bloody Tornado. He basically times the opponent's attack, and when he makes contact, he will leap backwards, spinning his body in the process while using blood bags to create a spinning stream of blood. He used this technique during his battle with Rose Oriana. The second one is called 10-minute death heartbreak, where he first uses magic to make sure blood is circulated into his brain while stopping his heart to simulate death. However, this is a high-risk move that might actually kill him if he isn't careful, and this proves that Cid is definitely batshit crazy. And he used this move when the cult attacked his school and he jumped in front of Rose to protect her. Anyways, that's pretty much all the skills and abilities that Cid Kagenou possesses, but before I end the video, there's a final ability that I wanted to mention, and it's his absurdly hilarious amount of luck, the real reason behind his overpowered nature. Because no matter what kind of BS he comes up with, it seems like his luck can just bend reality and causing things he say to always come true. For instance, when he first met Alpha and told her about the Cult de Diablos, he had no idea they existed, but somehow everything he said down to every last detail was completely true. And when his sister Claire was kidnapped, Shadow Garden couldn't even locate her, but he somehow guessed her location despite missing completely. If this isn't the most broken ability in his arsenal, then I don't know what is. And although this is play for laughs, from a story standpoint it actually makes sense because it can basically be as strong as the plot needs him to be without needing further explanations, and it does make the story quite entertaining, especially when members of Shadow Garden mistakes his sheer dumb luck for his brilliant and insightful wisdom. So yes, Cid Kagenou is definitely an overpowered character without a doubt and a complete psychopath, but I had to respect the message that his character represents. Never rely on just talent, instead work hard and have determination for the things that you do. Also, no matter how delusional his dreams were, he never gave up and continued to pursue his dreams, and I personally found that to be quite inspiring. But all in all, that was Cid Kagenou's skills and abilities, and hopefully I managed to cover most of it. And if you want to learn about his full story, be sure to check out part 1. Also, if you have any questions or ideas for upcoming videos, be sure to leave a comment down below, and I would love to read your opinions on Cid's character as well. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button as well, it really helps. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.